Today, we are going to explore what a cell is really doing all day long. We often call cells the basic units of life, but that description doesn't really capture how complex they are. If you look at this image, the cell is shown like a city. That helps us picture how different parts are constantly active and working together. A cell is not passive, it is always doing something. It is processing information, producing energy, and keeping itself stable. So, even though it may look simple under a microscope, it is actually a highly organized and constantly moving system. And by the end of this, you will see that life at the cellular level is anything but still, it is dynamic, continuous, and incredibly coordinated. Let's begin by reframing what a cell actually is. When we look at a cell, it is easy to think of it as just a structure, but it is much more than that. If you look at this diagram, you will see different organelles, each with a specific role. The nucleus stores genetic information, mitochondria produce energy, and ribosomes make proteins. But what really matters is how well all of these parts work together, almost like different departments in a city. Now, unlike a city, a cell never really shuts down. It is constantly active. Reactions are happening, molecules are moving, and signals are being processed all the time, even when it looks inactive. And importantly, this activity isn't random, it is tightly regulated. The cell maintains what we call a dynamic balance, constantly adjusting to keep internal conditions stable. So, overall, a cell isn't static, it is highly organized, constantly adapting system. If structure defines the system, energy is what keeps it alive. At the center of cellular life is ATP, the main energy currency of the cell. Almost every cellular process depends on it. So without ATP, the cell would stop functioning very quickly. So where does this energy come from? Cells generate ATP by breaking down nutrients like glucose. This happens through a series of controlled steps, enabling the cell to extract energy efficiently. Most of this process takes place in the mitochondria. If you look at the image, you can see them acting like energy hubs, with arrows showing continuous ATP production. And this is not a fixed process. The mitochondria adjust their activity depending on what the cell needs, whether it is resting, growing, or under stress. So, energy production is not only constant but also highly responsive. With energy available, the cell can now execute genetic instructions. Everything begins with DNA, which stores the genetic information needed to build and maintain the cell. In the diagram, it is kept inside the nucleus, protected and stable. But DNA does not act directly. To use this information, the cell first creates RNA, an intermediate copy. As you can see here, information flows from DNA to RNA and then to protein. These arrows represent that movement from stored information to functional output. The final step happens at ribosomes. In the image, they are shown attached to RNA strands, actively building proteins. And these proteins go on to do almost everything in the cell: support structure, drive metabolism, and enable communication. So, this entire process is constantly running, turning information into action. Once proteins are made, they must be delivered and coordinated across the cell. The cell membrane acts as a highly selective barrier. If you look at the outer edge here, you will see channels and transport proteins controlling what enters and leaves the cell. But transport does not stop there. Inside the cell, materials are constantly being moved, either through vesicles or along protein pathways. In the diagram, you can see particles traveling along defined routes to reach specific destinations. And beyond transport, cells also need to communicate. They send and receive chemical signals, which you can see here as molecules moving between cells. This communication allows cells to coordinate their behavior so the entire system functions together rather than as isolated parts. Beyond communication, cells must also maintain themselves and decide their fate. Inside the cell, maintenance is happening all the time. DNA is continuously monitored and repaired to preserve accurate genetic information. At the same time, damaged or misfolded proteins are broken down and recycled. This keeps the cell efficient and prevents harmful buildup. When conditions are right, the cell can then divide. In this diagram, the cell cycle is shown as a loop, emphasizing that division is a part of an ongoing regulated process. So the cell is not only maintaining itself, but it is also preparing for growth and reproduction. And when you step back and look at the bigger picture, from energy production to communication and self repair, a single cell is a world of constant activity, reminding us that life is never still, even at its smallest scale. If you would like to explore this topic further, you can check out the reference books listed here. Thank you for listening.